Hi, I'm Martin Wendel, and I'm the Director for the Value Creation through Innovation Specialization given by EIT Digital. I stand here in front of Haas School of Business and to welcome you to the first out of 2 courses regarding innovation entrepreneurship given by UC Berkeley. For those of you following the specialization, this is the 2nd out of 4 courses. And we have now moved from the Royal Institute of Technology, Stockholm, Sweden, to UC Berkeley, San Francisco in the United States. We have moved from one of the hottest startup scenes in the world, Stockholm, Sweden, to the San Francisco Bay Area and Silicon Valley, acting as the role model for startups, entrepreneurship, and innovation globally. We have moved from the home of the Nobel Prize, Stockholm, to one of the universities with the most Nobel laureates in the world, University of California, Berkeley. For me personally, this is also a very special place. I'm from Sweden, but my father was born here in Berkeley more than 100 years ago. And my grandfather had his own medical practice in San Francisco at the beginning of the last century. And the story goes that he also offered his services to the Haas family. In this course, we will start with innovation and entrepreneurship basics, followed by analyzing markets and how to engage with customers, and finally cover open innovation. I really hope that you will learn a lot and that this course will meet your expectations. And for those of you that do not yet follow the specialization, please consider to join the specialization, starting with the course, The Impact of Technology. Professor Andrew Isaacs is the program director for this course, and he will, together with his colleagues, guide you through these exciting topics.
Welcome back. My name is Andrew Isaacs, Faculty Director for this program. I'll share a few thoughts leading into Professor Coopersmith's lecture on entrepreneurship and innovation. The word entrepreneurship and the concepts around entrepreneurship are all going to be defined clearly in the lecture that follows. And I want to share also this particular thought regarding entrepreneurship, not necessarily a new one, but fundamental to understanding what entrepreneurship is and who entrepreneurs are. An entrepreneur is anyone who takes on a task without having all of the resources necessary to accomplish that task available at the outset. From that simple headwaters definition flows the entire field of entrepreneurship. What kind of people would take on a task without having all the resources they need at hand in order to accomplish that task? What sorts of enterprises lend themselves to being created in this way? What sort of investors would look to somebody who is crazy enough to take on a task without having all of the resources required to accomplish that task available at the outset? Fundamentally, that's the definition, the headwaters definition that everything else flows from regarding entrepreneurship. And the core attribute isn't entrepreneurship itself, it's the people themselves who act as entrepreneurs, maybe without even giving themselves that label, but who demonstrate entrepreneurial behavior, meaning they take on a task without having all the resources they need in order to accomplish that task. Now, you'll see that thread run through the entire lecture that follows, and I hope you'll think about, as you watch this course that Professor Coopersmith teaches, think about who you know who has these kinds of characteristics and reflect on whether you feel for yourself that these characteristics resonate or seem maybe like something that you're a little uncomfortable with. I hope you'll enjoy this lecture.
Hi, I'm Mark Coopersmith. I'm a senior fellow at the Haas School of Business at the University of California at Berkeley. I teach innovation and entrepreneurship here to graduate students and to business executives from around the world. And of course, I have the opportunity to travel around the world to teach this topic as well. I feel really fortunate to be at the University of California at Berkeley for several reasons. First of all, I'm an alumnus of UC Berkeley, having several degrees from this great institution. Secondly, we're right here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and if you haven't visited us, you should come and see us at UC Berkeley and spend some time in San Francisco. It's just a fantastic place. And third, and perhaps most germane to our topic here, we are right in the middle of this amazing ecosystem, this amazing place where innovation and entrepreneurship thrive. And they really thrive like almost no other place in the world, where we create these amazing startups that grow up to be Google and Apple and Facebook and Tesla and all these next generation industry-changing, disrupting companies across the board. You know, the ecosystem that we have here is just fantastic as well. I mean, it starts with great institutions like UC Berkeley and Stanford and others. And then we have all these amazing entrepreneurs. And they feed upon themselves, of course, as we have some of those great companies. As they grow, entrepreneurs then leave those companies, start new businesses, and continue to expand the rings of influence, if you will, the pay it forward that we have around entrepreneurs. We also have all this great access to capital here, these venture capitalists and angel investors and everything else in between. And then, in addition, there's a deep and rich ecosystem of service providers, of facilitators, investment bankers, attorneys, marketing specialists, technology specialists, all sorts of service firms and accelerators and incubators. And take all of these together and stir them up, and we've got this wonderful place where innovation and entrepreneurship happens. Which, for me, and also for you now, is really this amazing benefit, because we get to see how and study how innovators and entrepreneurs continue to evolve the way that we found, build, grow, and change businesses large and small. So we're going to focus on those foundational elements in our class today. So let's get started. A little bit about innovation and entrepreneurship. I'm going to start with, why is it that we care so much about innovation and entrepreneurship? Why are you taking this class, watching this video? Well, let's look at some background. First of all, let's talk about the pace with which business has accelerated, with which existing businesses and companies are being disrupted. If we were to take a look at the list of Fortune 500 companies, that's the 500 most valuable companies in the US. In 1920, if a company was on that particular list, so that's almost 100 years ago, it typically stayed on that list for an average of 67 years. Not a lot of change for those companies. Today, its lifespan on that list, the average lifespan, is 15 years and shrinking every year. Now, it's not that every company that gets onto that list and falls off has had a big decline in its business, because some of them are acquired or merged or have other reasons to fall off the list. But by and large, most companies that fall off that list have been disrupted, have been replaced by somebody else. Second, this concept of unicorns is relatively recent, over the past number of years. Unicorns are privately held companies that have a valuation in excess of $1 billion. A private company with $1 billion valuation based on money invested in valuations typically from venture capitalists. As we sit here, as I record this today, there are well in excess of 100 unicorns around the world. And the biggest concentration of unicorns happens to be right here in the San Francisco Bay Area. Those are companies like Uber, Airbnb, Dropbox, Slack, and many others that are young companies growing quickly and disrupting the status quo, changing the way we look at transportation, at residences and hotels and living arrangements, at communication and collaboration and information. All young companies, and all part of this great ecosystem that we have here in the San Francisco Bay Area. Third, if you listen to almost any CEO, when he talks about things he's proud about or she's proud about in their company, they'll talk about innovation in products and people and the way they look at markets. Companies actively seek that because they're looking for new revenue streams. They're looking for new ways to enter new markets or to expand their presence in existing markets. But it's not just companies. Economies are much the same way. We have delegations from around the world that come here to UC Berkeley in the San Francisco Bay Area to study our innovation and entrepreneurship economies here. Why? Because they want to transition their economies from being natural resources based or manufacturing based or engineering based. They all are looking to understand how they can create that spark in their own economies to drive new jobs, to help improve standards of living, to help improve the global competitiveness within their own countries and societies. Next, innovative companies, entrepreneurial companies typically do a much better job and are much more attractive when it comes to bringing in talent. Survey after survey shows that individuals are more interested in working for companies and in environments that they consider to be innovative, changing, and creating new opportunities for growth than they are in slower moving businesses and ventures. And finally, and let's look at that very top point as well. If you don't innovate, whether you're a Fortune 500 company, a mid-sized company, or a startup, if you don't innovate, you can rest assured that your competition will. And we'll go through some examples around that. So the key thing there is drive that innovation yourself, change the dialogue, change the marketplace. That's why innovation and entrepreneurship are so important. Otherwise, this is the type of reality that you just might exist within. As the one business leader says, instead of risking anything new, let's play it safe by continuing our slow decline into obsolescence. And think about the types of companies where that type of conversation might have taken place. For example, the Kodak photography, Eastman Kodak and Kodak photography, which was an iconic brand, but did not embrace the shift from analog to digital, even though they saw it coming, even though they actually created the first digital camera and owned some of those first patents. Now, we're going to define innovation and entrepreneurship, and I'll start with the premise that innovation and entrepreneurship are clearly not the same. Let's look at some definitions, shall we? I'm going to ask you to define, in your own words, innovation and entrepreneurship. Take out a piece of paper or open a window on your computer. Think about what they mean to you. Deconstruct the words a little bit as well. If you're within a group, have a conversation with some of your friends and write down your definitions and try and do each of those in 15 words or less. All right, I'm going to move on. I'm going to share my definitions with you. My definitions for innovation: developing a new solution or a new way of doing something that drives differentiation, versus the existing offerings versus your competitors, and creates measurable value. For me, adding that value is a crucial element of innovation. Otherwise, it's just an idea. So you're looking for those key elements when it comes to innovation. Secondly, entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurs pursue opportunities, often, but not always based on innovation, without regard to the resources directly and currently controlled by them. Now, a lot of entrepreneurs, and let's think about folks like Steve Jobs at Apple, or Bill Gates at Microsoft, or Elon Musk, first at PayPal and now at Tesla and SpaceX, or Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook. Pick your favorite entrepreneur. Focus on things with major innovation attached to them. But many entrepreneurs don't. Think about entrepreneurs that may open new businesses and take risks around concepts that may not be quite that innovative. It could be a bakery or a restaurant or a shoe repair shop or any one of many other businesses like a retail location. But nonetheless, these entrepreneurs are taking risks and pursuing opportunities. Now, how about the relationships between innovation and entrepreneurship? What I'd like you to do, this time you do need a piece of paper. I'd like you to grab a piece of paper, and I'd like you to think about innovation, entrepreneurship, and let's add inventions and ideas. And think about the relationships between those particular concepts. And I'd like to have you draw them out. And it could be Venn diagrams. It could be an iterative process. It could be any one of a number of different sets of relationships between these concepts. And of course, they don't all have to be the same size. This is going to take a little more time, so why don't you take 2 minutes or so and then come back and I'm going to share my answers, at least my approach to this. Okay? So to begin with, ideas are the biggest element. We all have many ideas, and every day we say, wouldn't it be great if, or have you thought about that? So we're going to start with ideas existing in space. Now within ideas, some of those ideas have the potential to turn into innovation. So innovation is going to overlap a lot with new ideas, and it may also overlap a little bit with the existing environment as well. And then third, we have invention. Some inventions are explicitly related to an innovation. Others may just be a different way. It's something else that you might do that may not meet the requirements in many ways of an innovation that we've defined, but still is a new invention, a new device, a new way of doing something. And then fourth, we have entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is the act of taking these ideas, innovations, inventions, and turning them into new businesses, new business concepts, and executing against that. And as I shared, not every entrepreneur deals with new innovations. Sometimes they will launch a business based on some existing business, like a bakery. But in many cases, they're around new inventions like Tesla, or new innovations like Google has done in their approach to search. Now, how did you do? I've done this particular example with students dozens, probably hundreds of times. And many times I'll have overlapping shapes like this. Sometimes I may have a funnel that starts with ideas and ends up with entrepreneurship. Other times I'll have an iterative process. All of those are different ways, different models that you might think about how these particular concepts are related. Well, as the great entrepreneur and innovator Walt Disney once said, the way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing.